in the city called the Pearl of the Orient, in the city shaped by a century of humiliation, in the city of Hong Kong, foreign dominance and local tyranny planted the seeds for organized crime. And from that melting pot, a beast of terrifying power arose. In this video, we'll be diving into a story of operations in the shadows. A story that rivals that of the Yakuza. This is the story of the Triads. The rise of the Triads. The Sicilian Mafia gained power from a lack of centralized authority and offered protection services to people. The Yakuza started as outcast groups that did illegal businesses and protection services just like the Mafia. The Triads, however, emerged from a different root: tyranny and oppression. The Qing dynasty was suffocating the people, and there were clamors for restoring the Ming dynasty. This is where the Triads rose up. By the start of the 18th century, several societies with origins from over 2,000 years ago rose up to cripple the Qing dynasty by engaging in radical and secret activities. The Qing dynasty soon collapsed after the Opium Wars, and when it did, the Triads took advantage of the power vacuum and their domination era began. Impoverished immigrants who had been victims of the tyrannical rule began to move to Hong Kong, and this served as a fresh source of manpower for the Triads to tap into. If you've made it this far, how about you consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video? It really helps us out and allows us to keep bringing you high-quality content about the Mafia world. Thanks, we appreciate you. The Pecking Order. The hierarchy in the crime world could be the difference between expansion and dissolution. Like the Yakuza and the Mafia, the Triads have a structure that governs their operations and internal dynamics, maintaining discipline, ensuring loyalty, and controlling the vast empire. In the Triads, numeric codes based on Chinese numerology signify ranks. The Dragonhead, 489 aka Mountain Monster, is the supreme leader, holding absolute power over the organization and overseeing all operations from criminal enterprise to recruitment and enforcement. They command enormous influence, and their word is law within the Triad. Between Triad groups, they are also responsible for forging alliances with other crime syndicates, helping to maintain the organization's global influence. A rung below the Dragonhead, we have the Fu Shanchu, 438, the Deputy Mountain Master. These are basically the right-hand men of the Dragonheads, and they typically have an extensive knowledge of the Triad's operations alongside the Dragonhead. Although the hierarchy can be traced in a straight line downward, there are branches that more or less wield the same influence and power over the bottom members. For instance, through the Deputy Mountain Master is the right-hand man, the Vanguards, who are operations officers, and the Incense Master may be considered on the same level due to their ceremonial and logistical powers. Below these positions, the Red Poles, 426, are next. These are enforcers of the Triad and are responsible for overseeing the carrying out of violent operations, including extortion, assassinations, punishment for members, and so on. These enforcers, the Red Poles, lead groups of 49ers who are ordinary Triad members executing the organization's plans. Typically, Red Poles are promoted from 49ers based on their loyalty and effectiveness. They are feared within the outside of the organization for their ruthlessness and willingness to resort to violence when the big boys on top demand it. In a manner of speaking, they share the rung of hierarchy with white paper fans, who are the organization's accountants, and straw sandals, the messengers who act as mediators between Triad groups. The 49ers are the ordinary members of the group, and the Blue Lanterns are the probationary members. Since they aren't fully fledged members, they're only allowed to commit minor crimes in the name of the organization. This compartmentalization protects the higher ranks of the Triads, and it ensures that each tier knows only as much as needed to fulfill their role, as well as maintaining discipline within the ranks. Rituals and initiation ceremonies. The Triads' rituals are very important to their culture and date back to the time when they were merely secret societies. These practices foster a sense of brotherhood, and the initiation ceremony, in particular, is a very important moment in a member's life. By participating in these rituals, members of the Triads are indoctrinated into a shared culture and ideological framework, emphasizing secrecy, loyalty, and brotherhood. The initiation process consists of a blood oath, in which the member swears loyalty to the organization. It is done at an altar dedicated to Guan Yu, an ancient Chinese military general who lived during the end of the Yuan dynasty and is now the patron deity of the Triads. There usually is incense, and animal sacrifices are done as well. A mixture of blood and wine is drunk, and the member then passes beneath an arch of swords while reciting the Triad's oath. The oath is written on a piece of paper, which would be burnt as confirmation of the inductees' bonds to their duties, and 3 fingers of the left hand are raised as a binding gesture. There are typically 36 oaths, the most important of which are secrecy, brotherhood, respect for the hierarchy, and punishment for treason. Infamous members. Historically, various figures have emerged as legendary or notorious within the Triads. They rose to power through ruthlessness and strategy, often becoming the face of Triad organizations in Hong Kong and internationally. Crippled Ho led the 14K Triad, now known as the second most powerful Triad faction in Hong Kong. Despite being handicapped, Crippled Ho was feared by all for his brutality. His operations included a platter of drug trafficking, extortion, and human trafficking. During the 1960s and 1970s, Crippled Ho turned the 14K Triad into one of the largest heroin distributors in the world, allowing them to control significant portions of the drug trade in Southeast Asia and even expanding their operations into Europe and North America. Despite his eventual arrest and imprisonment, his influence persisted, and he remains a legendary figure in Triad history. Broken Tooth Koi was another Triad leader whose rise to power in the 1990s exemplified the brutal and violent side of Triad operations. As the leader of the 14K Triad in Macau, Broken Tooth Koi became infamous for his involvement in high-profile criminal activities, including drug trafficking, loan sharking, and extortion, ruling over Macau's criminal underworld with an iron fist. His reign came to an abrupt end in 1999 when he was arrested and sentenced to 15 years in prison for various crimes. His release from prison in 2012 was met with both anticipation and fear. Other iconic Triad bosses include Li Tai Lung, a boss in the most powerful Triad group, Sun Leong, big spender Chung Tse Kong, Hong Kong gangster who gained notoriety for masterminding the abduction of one of the country's top businessmen, as well as the son of a billionaire, and Chen Shi Li, former head of the United Bamboo Gang. Operations. The Triads have an extensive criminal portfolio, with their operations spanning 4 continents, from traditional racketeering to modern-day cybercrime. At the core of their operations, traditional crimes have helped sustain their power and influence for centuries. Historically, the Triads have dipped their fingers in the pie of the opium trade and smuggled the drug from Southeast Asia's Golden Triangle in China and beyond. Though they have expanded into narcotics in modern times, they remain key players in the production and distribution of heroin, methamphetamine, and synthetic drugs. Gambling has been one of the Triads' most profitable ventures since the 20th century. In Hong Kong, the Triads operate extensive underground gambling dens and legitimate casinos, which they use as fronts to hide their deals from law enforcement scrutiny. Human trafficking is another crucial element of Triad operations, particularly in Southeast Asia, China, and parts of Europe. The Triads have long exploited vulnerable demographics they are in proximity to, luring young people, especially women and children, into the sex trade with false promises of legitimate employment or migration. They operate an extensive network of brothels in Hong Kong and even places like London and Sydney. They control both high-end prostitution services and low-tier street prostitution, and also traffic individuals for forced labor or sexual exploitation. They profit by smuggling migrants into Western countries, exploiting them through debt bondage, or forcing them into illegal work. In addition to their traditional operations, they've dipped into even more criminal enterprises to keep their organizations afloat. These include money laundering through real estate and offshore banking, cybercrime, counterfeiting, and IP theft. They often partake in extortion and protection rackets. The Triads have a long history of resilience and evading total disintegration, but the campaigns against them have once again picked up. With global expansion came global scrutiny, and the floodgates are now open for the FBI, Interpol, and many other international organizations to hunt them down and close their businesses. Would the Triads survive another century? Let us know what you think in the comments below. And for more dark stories of the underworld, subscribe to the channel and ring the notification bell to never miss an update.